morning. I'm Pastor Patricia Hughes, and this is the sermon I'm going to be preaching this Sunday, August 9th, 2020, at Holy Cross Lutheran Church. So a sermon isn't a sermon until you deliver it, so this is really a practice. Please stop this tape and go listen to the readings for today, if you haven't already. In life, there are peaks and there are valleys. Wouldn't you agree? There are mountaintop experiences, high points, where we feel God's love and almost feel the hand of God lifting us up into the heavens. Maybe it's a great worship experience. Maybe it's a wonderful family time. Maybe it's success as measured by the world, but it's a high of some sort. And then there are low points where we look around and say, where is God when these awful things happen to me? We feel low because of illness or loss or bad things happening to us. And so I ask you, where is God in each of these instances, the peaks and the valleys? Well, let's look at that gospel reading where it's fairly easy to see. God is there in the details. The feeding of the 5,000 has just happened, a miracle, and then Jesus goes away to pray and the men go out in the boat. And suddenly there is Jesus walking on water. And Peter asks him to command him to walk out there too, and it's blissful until Peter loses heart and begins sinking. Jesus scoops him up, of course, but there are the peaks and valleys in life. But the story in Genesis, which begins, this is the story of the family of Jacob. There are some big peaks and valleys. Last week we relished the story where Jacob finally came to terms with God, and as they wrestle, and showing some real personal growth. And now here he is with 11 of his sons, and he's showing favoritism to Joseph, not the eldest, but the son of the wife he loved. And not only that, but Joseph has picked up this thread and begins to tattle on his brothers to daddy. And then, well, this part is omitted from our reading because it's pretty long, but he has dreams where he is the star and all his brothers bow down to him. And he tells the brothers this. He thinks he's pretty cool. We have a peak for Joseph there, and Jacob too, all is well, but not for the other brothers. They're in a valley of jealousy, feeling unloved by their father, and so they take steps. They're out working, and Joseph has to go a long way, about 20 miles, to find them in a place that he doesn't know. I always wonder, are they hiding from him, or does he show up to work so seldom that he doesn't even know where the workplaces are? And the brothers are not happy to see him, and they throw him in a pit. You got the peaks and the valleys there? Yeah. Things are bad for him, but they are about to be worse, as the brothers chat about killing him, but decide to sell him instead. And they tell their father a lie about him being killed. Big valley for Joseph. Big valley for Jacob. Something of a peak for the other boys. Nay, yeah, the snitch is gone, but you know, friends, that kind of peak doesn't really feel very good. Next week, we'll pick up the story at this end and skip a lot of the valleys for Joseph, so we'll stop here today in this deep valley. Joseph was treated pretty unjustly here by his brothers, but of course, the brothers were treated pretty unjustly for quite a while, as their father made one of them an obvious favorite and showed him more love than the others. So I bring you today this visual of a family struggling with peaks and valleys, just like Peter did that day with Jesus, just like you and I are experiencing today. It's a good time to talk about peaks and valleys and God's role in that in our life. Jesus is clearly a redeemer in the Peter story, rescuing him from Peter's own fears and pointing them out at the same time. How is God calling us to be redeemers in the stories in which we find ourselves right now? I think one way that God acts in the world is to call us to seek justice, to do justice, to be able to recognize injustice when we see it, as in the Joseph epic. Next week we'll resolve the Joseph story and put it nicely into place, but today all is unsettled. Wrong has been done, and no angel has swooped down to save the day. I feel that from time to time with the pandemic all around us. How long, O Lord, must we suffer? And even worse, I've noticed a lot of us are just inconvenienced, not really suffering. But we keep seeing and hearing about how others suffer mightily. Death, loss of income, loss of health, loss of jobs. This at a distance suffering can be unsettling in its own way. Why does a just God allow this? And what am I supposed to do about it? What are your thoughts about our at a distance suffering when we see and hear about horrific suffering, like the indignities visited upon people of color for hundreds of years, the inequalities we see in neighborhoods where Latinos or immigrants are in the majority? I think these sagas of redemption point us, I believe, toward action. I'd like to point you to Reuben's role in this story. Do you recall? Reuben uses his influence to persuade his brothers not to kill Joseph, but just to throw him in a pit. And the text says Reuben was planning to rescue him later. But that opportunity passes when the caravan passes. And Judah sees an opportunity too to sell Joseph, to get rid of him and make a few bucks on the side. I will leave to your imagination now as we have approached opportunities in our lives and in the lives of our church. How often have we been Reuben? Well-intentioned, but part of the problem. Without Reuben's intervention, Joseph would never have lived to go to Egypt, where so many pieces of the Old Testament story are put into place. Was Reuben's intervention for good? It is hard to see it as wholly good. What is God calling churches and church people to be about in these days of fear and isolation? Surely we are to be on the side of comfort and care. How can we, a small church in a small neighborhood, be part of direct action in our time? I think that's the question for today. How is God calling you and me to be redeemers? Amen.